It is no longer even safe to travel to the state of Florida. In Jacksonville Beach, 3 individual shootings in one night. Since 2019, when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis took power of the state of Florida, the state's homicide rate has not stopped going up. Over the last 4 years, Gainesville, Florida has seen a 75% increase in homicides. In 2017, the homicide rate in Florida was 6.4. By 2021, Florida's homicide rate had increased to 7.4. But despite the fact that homicide rates have been rising in the state of Florida, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement says that Florida crime is at a 50-year low. How can crime be at a 50-year low in Florida when homicide rates are up significantly? In Miami, hundreds of people celebrating spring break were arrested for violating a curfew that the city imposed. What are we living under martial law now or something in Florida? But regardless, the most dangerous thing facing the state of Florida are the laws that are being passed in the state. With the passing of every new law, Florida becomes a more dangerous and dysfunctional state because these laws are not looking out to protect the people, but they're looking out to protect the interests of big corporations and insurance companies. Before Governor Ron DeSantis changed Florida's gun laws, Florida was the safest state in the South, but that title is quickly fleeing as the state of Florida is seeing an increasing amount of gun violence, in particular in the youth population. Today, a story out of the Florida Keys. A deputy kills a 15-year-old girl that was armed. And last week in Bradenton, Florida, a 17-year-old was killed at another event where there were guns. To please extreme right supporters, Florida governor changed the gun laws, and now we're starting to see an increase in gun fatalities, particularly among juveniles, leaving people wondering, is it even safe to visit the state of Florida right now with all the crazy things that are happening? Today, we're going to learn a little bit about Florida's new tort laws that Governor Ron DeSantis signed, and we're going to learn about how difficult these laws make life for people like me and you, and how juicy and profitable these new changes are to insurance companies that will benefit greatly from these new reforms. It's clear that the state of Florida right now is being run by insurance companies who have free will to make any legislation they want and are doing so at free will, despite the fact that the people of Florida are complaining. But it's not just gun violence that should scare you away from going to Florida right now. Let's learn a little bit about these tort reform laws that the governor signed and how they will affect life for those living in Florida and also anyone visiting the state. If you live in the state of Florida right now, you better hope that you don't get hurt. Because if you do, you have no idea the type of situation you're currently in. Because Florida's governor recently changed the laws on tort, and believe it or not, you are now so unprotected, you don't even have an idea how vulnerable you are right now. If you live in the state of Florida, or you plan to vacation or visit the state of Florida in the near future, if you get hurt by somebody's negligence, you're practically unable to receive compensation, medical treatment because of a new law that the governor recently signed. Let's get into today's video. With these new laws in the state of Florida, somebody could be neglectful, you could end up hurt, and you will not be able to sue the other party even if it's on video. On top of that, when you go to obtain medical treatment, the letter of representation from your lawyer is no longer valid, which means if you don't have insurance and you get hurt in the state of Florida, you don't have a case. Let me remind you that you getting hurt in the state of Florida is something you have absolutely no control over. This is something that's going to happen to you, and the entire situation will be out of your control. but you could suffer injuries that could leave you paralyzed or injured for the rest of your life. And the people that caused that injury, even if you were to have, let's say, video evidence of what happened, could simply walk away and not have to worry about it. The state of Florida is for protecting the rights of big corporations and insurance companies and making sure that people like me and you are completely disposable. Listen to the language of this bill. Mere negligence is insufficient. That means that if somebody in the state of Florida is neglectful and they hurt you, you don't have a claim against them. Let's suppose you hire an attorney in the state of Florida to represent you, and that attorney fails to include evidence within the first 90 days of your claim. Then that evidence will not be admissible anymore because your lawyer failed to use it in the first 90 days, which means if that attorney decides not to represent you and now you need another attorney to represent you further down the line, your evidence is no longer useful, which means your first attorney has the ability to put your claim in bad faith whether they choose to represent you or not, or to move forward with your case. That first initial attorney that grabs your case has the ability to ensure that no other attorney after him will be able to use that case again in court. And that is because this law was designed not to protect the interests of the people of Florida. This is yet another law enacted in the state of Florida with the sole purpose of protecting insurance companies. How long will the state of Florida continue to benefit insurance companies at the expense of the people of Florida? Every single law that this guy has passed has indirectly somehow benefited insurance companies and left the people of Florida more vulnerable. Currently, the state of Florida is the most frivolous state in the nation. Roughly 1 in every $20 that moves in Florida's economy is in the hands of lawyers through litigation, more than any other state in the country. This just goes to show how ineffective the legal system in Florida has become. If you move to Florida and you get hurt, or if you come to Florida on vacation and you are injured somehow because of the negligence of a hotel or a restaurant or anybody in the States, chances are that the people who injured you are going to be off the hook with the help of Ron DeSantis' new tort reform laws. See, for the most part, when a state is conservative, they rarely offer up any money for people being hurt. While if a state is liberal or Democrat, those numbers get into the average of millions, like it's the case for California or New York. Well, the state of Florida has a problem, and that problem is that the state of Florida usually offers large settlements despite the fact it's a conservative state. Large settlements protect the people from being hurt by large corporations, and thus, in states like Arkansas, for example, or Kentucky, where there really isn't that much protection for the people, you'll notice that there are more workplace accidents, more workplace fatalities, as well as more industries that can cause people to get hurt. However, in the state of Florida, it's not so much the employees who are at risk of being hurt, but it is you, the customer. It is you, the paying guest at a hotel, who's actually more likely to be hurt, because the state of Florida, the largest industry isn't agriculture, but it is tourism. So it is you, the person visiting Florida, who is protected by the fact that you're getting large settlements for injuries. But moving forward, Ron DeSantis' new tort reforms are aimed at bringing the state of Florida to the level of states like Kentucky or Arkansas that do not protect the interests of the people. In other words, these new laws will make tourism more profitable for the large corporations and the insurance companies, but it will leave you, the person vacationing in Florida, more vulnerable to being injured by somebody when the laws are going to start to protect negligence from big corporations and incriminate you for not submitting your evidence on time, Or if your lawyer for some reason doesn't do it, moving forward, your case is left in bad faith with little value. Many times when people first have an injury, they'll go with any big billboard lawyer, but after surgeries and complications, then they decide that they want a more qualified lawyer to represent them. As they start to see that their medical complications and medical bills are getting larger, they may no longer be comfortable with any regular lawyer to represent them. But now that big lawyer corporation will have the ability to pretty much destroy the value of your case before you are able to move forward. They can sit on the case and do nothing, which is what many large corporation lawyers do. Or they can simply not submit the evidence, ensuring that you will not be able to submit it again in the future because you went past the statute of limitations and thus destroying the value of your case. And again, 90 days simply isn't enough for you to formulate your legal plan when your medical bills are most likely not going to happen within those first 90 days. But under Florida's new laws, negligence doesn't have a lot of bearing in the legal system. Lawyers in Florida are quite literally rushing right now to dump as many cases as they can because they don't really understand how or to what extent these new laws are going to be implicating the current cases they have. And thus, a lot of people who are injured in the state of Florida right now are having their cases dismissed by attorneys who are simply afraid of the legal nightmare that it has become to defend somebody in Florida who was injured by somebody else's negligence. Most of us assume that if another party is negligent, especially if the other party is extremely negligent, let's say they were negligent 5, 6, 7 times, not just one negligence, they were just a handful of neglectful things that they did that led to your injury, you would assume that you would have some type of legal case. They were negligent, you got hurt. Well, now welcome to the state of Florida where negligence doesn't matter anymore. That means that the maintenance of hotels, tourist attractions, perhaps restaurants, anywhere you go in the state of Florida, Florida's governor has now made it to where these big insurance companies and big corporations don't have to worry about you getting hurt because they're neglectful. And to add another layer of complication, if you just hire any lawyer off a billboard and that lawyer is incompetent or doesn't really care to move forward with your case, chances are the next lawyer that wants to pick up that case will be past the statute of limitations and now your case will have no value. Florida's new tort reform laws introduce comparative fault into the equation. Usually if one party is guilty of negligence, well then they hurt you because they were neglectful. But when you introduce comparative fault, it kind of starts to be a situation of a victim blaming where let's see what the victim did wrong. Were you wearing the wrong type of shoes perhaps? Oh, you were wearing sandals. You contributed to yourself being hurt. A piece of equipment falls off a construction site, lands on top of your car, but your car was a convertible. Now this is comparative fault. Well, it wasn't our fault that you were in a convertible, so now we're not liable for your injury because, well, you were in a convertible, not a car that had a roof. Just think about the millions, if not billions of dollars that Ron DeSantis' new tort laws are going to be saving these insurance companies. If they're able to find any fault at all with you, may it be whether you're wearing a pair of flip-flops or your shoes weren't tied or you were in a convertible, that will be enough reason for those insurance companies not having to pay. Imagine being in a situation where the court instructs a jury that they need to assume that the defendant is innocent when your injury was caused by their negligence. Ron DeSantis' new law on tort reform goes after medical bills, letters of protection. So let's say you get injured right now and you need a $100,000 surgery. Well, that surgery will go under a letter of protection. It's a letter or a promise from your lawyer that when your case is won, they will be reinstituted the amount of money. In other words, it's like saying, hey, we don't have this money yet, but we have a good lawsuit here. When we win our lawsuit, you'll get paid for this surgery. Well, this new law from the state of Florida goes after and restricts letters of protection, which are used by people who are hurt to obtain medical services. So if you are now injured in the state of Florida and you need an emergency medical treatment, so let's think about this law for a minute. You get hurt while visiting a hotel in the state of Florida. Now you need medical attention. The doctor says, hey, who's going to pay for this? Moving forward in the state of Florida, if somebody hurts you, they don't have to worry about your medical bills being used against them in court to recover damages because you won't be able to receive medical attention. Who reaps the benefit of this law? You could come to Florida right now, get hurt somewhere, and when you go to get medical treatment, they can be like, hold on, buddy. We're not going to give you this medical treatment because we don't accept letters of protection. The only way you can really, in the state of Florida, defend an injury claim is if you have treatment. But if you're now not able to get treatment because the other party refuses to take a letter of protection from an attorney, you see what they're doing here? Like, do you understand what they're doing to you in Florida? They're making sure that you're not able to sue somebody who hurts you. Florida's new tort reform law signed by Governor Ron DeSantis has literally made it to the point where if somebody were to hurt you, not only would you not be able to receive medical treatment, but you also most likely wouldn't be able even to say that the reason you got hurt was because of somebody else's negligence. That means that moving forward in the state of Florida, big corporations and insurance companies, they don't have to worry about hurting you or your family because they're no longer liable. Does this make you want to move to the state of Florida? Does this make you want to vacation in the state of Florida? And wait, there's even more. You know when you get hurt and they give you money for future medical damages? In other words, we understand now you're going to be disabled for the rest of your life. Well, that money can only be given to you if they can confirm that you're going to how are you going to use your medical treatment in the future? You have to be specific. How do you know? Explain to me, how do you know what medical treatments you're going to need a year from now or 6 months from now? You really don't. In other words, these big companies and corporations and insurance companies in the state of Florida are not even going to have to worry about paying you for future damages, because the only way you can charge for future damages is if you can somehow prove what you're going to need in the future. I don't know if you know this, but most of the time when you enter medical services, you don't know what the crap you're going to need until you need it. You need to know these laws, because if you get hurt in the state of Florida right now, you're not as secure as you think you are. You need to study these laws if you live in the state of Florida. Take time out of your day and learn about these laws, because you don't get to decide when you get hurt. Usually laws are based off of common sense, things that are justice, things that are right. But these laws are not based off of justice. The way the state of Florida right now is handling these cases is basically the big corporations and insurance companies lobbied so they can get exactly what they wanted so that they don't have to pay people like me and you. So there's no justice involved in how these cases are being handled right now. So you need to know, if you're visiting Florida or if you live in Florida, just take some time out of your life and learn these laws and exactly how they apply to you. Because if you were to get hurt in the state of Florida, you would be surprised how messed up this new system is. I love the state of Florida. All my friends and family live here. It's the place where I grew up. But I gotta tell you, man, they are making life so freaking hard for the normal working class person here. It's like they're forcing you to freaking leave. It's like, leave or we'll freaking kill you. I love this place. I grew up here. Everything that I love is in Florida. But they are making life so freaking hard for us. Please, if you live in the state of Florida, learn a little bit about these laws and how they're going to affect you if you get hurt. Because you may discover that if something were to happen to you right now in Florida, you possibly would have absolutely no chance of defending yourself.